So what are the top 5 things that you should avoid doing at your USCIS immigration interview? Hi, I'm attorney Megan Pastrana of Immigration for Couples, and my firm is dedicated exclusively to helping couples across the nation and across the world in navigating the U.S. immigration process. If you are new to our channel, please select the subscribe button below. I regularly post videos with important information and updates that you will want to know if you are going through an immigration process. We also host weekly live attorney chats on our YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram profiles for our firm. So you also want to follow our Facebook page, Immigration for Couples. During those weekly live chats, I will actually be answering your questions live. So you won't want to miss out on that opportunity. All right, so let's dive in. What are the top 5 things that you should avoid doing at your marriage green card interview? So part of the green card process, if you're going through a marriage adjustment of status case, involves an interview in front of an immigration officer. The immigration officer will be asking you questions about your immigration history and about your relationship. Now, in a separate video, I did talk about how we are seeing more and more interviews being waived, but immigration, they can schedule you for an interview if they have questions. So interviews are still happening, even though they are waiving some interviews in some cases. So let's talk about those 5 tips. And you'll want to stay tuned because number 5, tip 5, you'll want to stay to the end, is really, really important. It's the most important that you should be aware of. So the first thing, the first tip, the first you should not do is you should not interrupt or be disrespectful to the immigration officer. Now that sounds pretty common, like common sense, right? You should know that. But it's really natural in a conversation to the person is asking a question and maybe they haven't quite finished and you know the answer and you respond. So in normal conversation, a little bit of interrupting might happen, but it's really important to stop and listen and wait for that officer to finish and not interrupt that immigration officer, because they will receive that as being disrespectful. And also, you haven't given them the chance to ask the full question, and so you might be answering something that's incorrect. So don't be disrespectful and do not interrupt them. Even if you think their question is crazy or that they are being rude, don't be disrespectful, don't interrupt them. All right, so that's the number 1 thing. Don't do that. Tip 2 of what you shouldn't do, don't lie. Again, this seems like common sense, but if you're nervous and you're afraid that your answer might cause you more problems, actually lying will cause you more problems. If you think that your answer is not what immigration wants to hear or you're afraid to tell the truth, the reality is immigration has a lot of information on your background. They'll have your immigration file. They have an entire investigation unit dedicated to doing what they call field work. They can go to your neighbor's house and knock on the door and ask questions and ask information. So if they ask you a question, it's very, very important you tell the truth. Don't lie, because lying will cause you way more issues. It can result in a denial. It will result in a denial if you lie, and you would have to go through an entire waiver process to ask for forgiveness. So don't lie. Tip number 3 of what you shouldn't do, don't guess. I always tell my clients when we're preparing for their interview, it's really important to not guess. I always give the example of street addresses or former addresses, right? If you have a lot of addresses, a lot of places you've lived, things and dates and all of that can start to blur together, right? So if immigration would ask you, hey, what was the address, your prior address or 2 addresses ago? And you remember the city and state, but for the life of you, the street address escapes you. Make sure that you tell them, I'm not sure. I don't remember the street address, but I remember for certain it was this city and state. So always be clear. If you're not sure on the answer, let the immigration officer know, and don't guess, because guessing can cause your file to have contradictions, and that can cause issues. So again, don't guess. If the immigration officer asks you a question that you can answer yes or no, or they ask you a question and you can give a response without going into more details, that's always better. So tip number 4 is don't give information beyond the immigration officer's question. If they ask you a yes or no question, if they ask you what is the color of your spouse's car, answer that question. You don't have to go into details, nor do you want to go into a whole narrative or other details. Because when you give more information, that can give the officer more information and more questions that he or she might ask you. And you might accidentally give information that could be harmful to your case. So just answer the question that is asked without going into additional details. All right, so number 5, what is the top tip that I was saying you needed to stay tuned for? Number 5, what you should not do, absolutely do not do this, do not answer for your spouse. I always tell my clients this, it's so important that you don't answer for your spouse. Why? Because if the immigration officer says, hey, Sally, when was the last time you both went on a date? And Sam, husband, answers, the immigration officers are going to say, timeout. You cannot be answering for each other. I am wanting to get information about your relationship. And if you do that again, I'm going to have to separate you. Some immigration officers won't even give you that chance. They'll go ahead and they're just going to say, you know what? You're answering from one another. I was letting you be here together in this interview. I'm going to have to separate you. So it's very, very important. Do not answer for your spouse. If you're not sure, if the officer asks generally, so when did the two of you meet? It's okay to say who needs to answer this question. So you're not interrupting each other. You're not talking over each other. Sometimes maybe I've seen where as a couple, you complement each other and in your strengths and your weaknesses. And some individuals are really good at remembering dates, and others, dates might elude you. And especially if you're in a stressful situation, you might forget dates. And then if the immigration officer's asking one person and the other one answers, it will cause a lot of problems. They will separate you. The interview can be more intense. And it's also going to cause them to question, hey, do these people know each other? If they can't, if both of them are not on the same page with this information. So be very sure. Top tip, do not answer, do not interrupt your spouse, and do not answer for your spouse during the interview. If you would like to learn more about the immigration process, how to prove your relationship, I invite you to check out our free resource center at immigrationforcouples.com. We have tons of free resources, whether you're just starting out or in the middle of your immigration journey. Thanks for watching.